You recording?
Yeah, hold on one second. Awesome.
All right. Welcome to the Inside Carolina podcast. I'm your host, Tommy Ashley. It is Wednesday night, 8 a.m. Eastern, a little bit after. It is On the Beat Live. Greg Barnes, Gregory Hall, and myself, Johnny T-Shirt and JohnnyT-Shirt.com sponsoring. With that On the Beat Live and with Greg and Gregory in tow, I'll go to Greg Barnes first. Greg, Carolina preparing for first round matchup against 9-seed Marquette. I guess 3:30 tomorrow, your time, y'all's time, 4:30 Eastern here in North Carolina. This is a game that Carolina is finally, as Hubert said and other people have said, is getting the full NCAA tournament experience. What's it like down in Fort Worth?
It's like old times, Tommy. Just to have the open practice. That's the first time we've done that since the Luke May days back in 2019, which is crazy. But to see fans kind of milling about and to see the players be able to interact with the fans and to sign autographs and take pictures with them. Armando Baycott kind of brushed me out of the way so a young kid can come up behind the bench and take a picture with him, after practice. That kind of stuff's awesome. I mean, that's what this is about. And the players haven't, gotten to experience that. In 2020, of course, the tournament was canceled. Last year, it was in a bubble in Indianapolis. So just that part of it, it kind of, the return of normalcy, I guess. We've talked about that a lot. We're finally getting there. I know we're not quite there yet, but it was interesting to see the players, to be able to sit in the same room with them and talk to them. We've done that twice this week, and that's the first time that's happened in 2 years. So it's good for us selfishly as media members, but you can tell that the players really enjoy the interaction as well.
Yeah, it's crazy when you think about it. I mean, it was 2019 when did this in the real world with people actually around. Of course, last year was a tournament, but not really a tournament as we know it. Gregory, your take, it's been a while, man, and Carolina's in it. Those open practices were always cool to me to be able to go to, either covering it with Inside Carolina or to be there from a fan perspective, to take your kids to go get to see them practice. Pretty cool experience.
Yeah, I mean, not only has it been a while, but I've never done this. I've never covered an NCAA tournament. So today was pretty cool to actually have good arena Wi-Fi. So that was cool. And obviously good enough Wi-Fi to live stream here from the hotel. Obviously, we're getting some people in here now since I told everyone we weren't going to be going live, but I lied. So a little fun surprise there. But no, it was cool to see them out there just having fun for 30 minutes. I mean, it wasn't much. It was calisthenics and stretching, and then the bigs and the guards split up and did their layup lines and dunks. And at the end, they were having some fun with seeing Justin McCoy do some dunks, Caleb Love throwing the ball off the side of the backboard to Dontrez and things like that. And the players were having fun. RJ trying his best to do dunks off the floor and things like that. So, I mean, it was cool to see, and talking to them in person these last 2 weeks has been really cool. I mean, the press conference yesterday, Greg, I mean, Brendan Mark started it and he had like 4 follow-ups. We don't get to do that, like quick fire, and it was kind of because Armando didn't really give him much. So he's kind of going for more, and you can kind of configure your question to get a better answer. But on Zoom, you just have one try, and if they give you a one sentence answer, that's all you get. You can't really dig for more, like we were able to yesterday, and just being able to talk to these guys more.
Yeah, a good example of that, Tommy, is I asked Armando Baycott about Marquette's physicality, and that's kind of what they're known for, and how North Carolina intends to kind of match up in terms of physicality. And he says, well, I guess we just have to match them physically. And everybody kind of got to laugh at it, but in a Zoom setting, sometimes, the moderator quickly goes to the next question. Everybody got a laugh out of it, and everybody kind of started joking with him. And so he's like, all right. And so he gave a extended answer. So Gregory's exactly right. The ability to follow up and for them to understand what you're asking them. You can do that in a face-to-face setting. It's harder to do over Zoom. That's how you kind of build relationships. And that's how you make sure they understand what you're asking. You can get the appropriate answer from them that you're looking for, that you're trying to get their opinion on. And that's just a critical aspect of our job that's been lacking for 2 years. And so it's nice that we're kind of getting back into the standard operating procedures of things.
One thing I like listening to the press conference today, well, a couple of things. I like how, and I forget who asked the question, and it went from Baycott to RJ, and they said, Brady, you got anything? He's like, no, I'm good. I don't need to say anything else. And then
that was about being asked about the Wisconsin game, which he wasn't even on the team. So he was like, I mean, I don't know what it felt like to lose by 23 last year.
But then the other part of it is one of my favorite things, a part of it, and this is something I've been saying to you guys while it's all been on Zoom. I liked how the moderator said, this is a hybrid press conference here. We will allow people on Zoom to ask questions when the people in the room are finished or whatever. I kind of like that aspect of it because it credits the people that actually go, whether you're sitting up in the nosebleeds at Smith Center covering the game. It's a little bit different than sitting on your couch and getting early access. So I kind of appreciate that. I'm a little bit old school. Let's talk a little bit about what they discussed. And Greg, to your point, Baycott was pretty candid today. Or yesterday, whenever they spoke to the media. And he talked about, they're not really good at rebounding the basketball. We've got the size advantage or all that. Those guys were talking as confidently as I've heard them talk all season.
Yeah, well, they should be. I mean, this team is playing as well as they have all season long. The Pittsburgh game was 4 weeks ago today. And I think you can make the case that was the low point of the season. And so over the last 4 weeks, the team has really played well. Yes, they had a bad loss. Well, not a bad loss. They lost to Virginia Tech and were down by 20. But Virginia Tech just had a great run through the ACC tournament. And so North Carolina went out with a semifinal loss. But really, other than that, they've looked really good. And so this team should be confident. And when you look up, matchups are so important in this tournament. And when you start looking at Marquette stats, you're like, wait a minute, they are as bad as they are rebounding the ball. Let's see. Let me pull it up right here. They are 330th nationally in offensive rebounding percentage. There's only 358 teams in Division I. So 330 there. And then they're 306 in defensive rebounding. And you look at what Armando Baycott has done. I mean, he's already got over 400 rebounds himself this season. He has a right to say he's going to feast because he will. But the flip side of that is, wait a minute, how does a team that is that bad on the glass, how are they in the NCAA tournament? How are they 19-12, and how did they finish fifth in the Big East? And so we can dive into those parts of it. But without a doubt, North Carolina should feel like they have a significant advantage on the glass. But they've got to make sure it is a substantial margin in that statistic on Thursday for them to feel comfortable about having a chance to win.
Yeah, I want to dig into that deeper. But Gregory, I want to get your take on something else Hubert Davis said. And he's really leaned into these press conferences and gotten so much better. And they were discussing his pregame speeches and all. But he said something that I thought was pretty cool. He said, and I'm paraphrasing, he said, I want these guys to have their own experiences. Basically, he doesn't want him and his coaches, Lebo and those guys sitting around talking about, good old times. He wants the guys to get the experience. How important is that for this team to get this bonding experience, to be able to go away, the NCAA tournament, have some fun doing it, but also get focused up and prepared for tomorrow?
Yeah, I mean, Armando's in his third year playing at the University of North Carolina, and he didn't get a tournament and then lost in the first round the way they did last year. Like, that's like Armando's been at UNC for 3 years. This is his third season, and that's his whole NCAA tournament experience, right? Like that's pretty amazing when you think of it like that. And Leaky's the only guy on this team that's had any tournament success. And he brings up his times in the NBA a lot. He brings up, he says, I played 12 years in the NBA. I played for these coaches, so-and-so. He talks about what he played in Carolina for 4 years. And like, he has a lot of stories to tell, and he brings them up. He tells them some to us. He talks about how he tells them to his players. But at the end of the day, the main thing he cares about is his players. And the first really big time experience that they had was when they beat Duke at Duke, and Brady and Armando are breaking down, just crying into his shoulder. Like that's a moment in that game and that day and experience that they'll remember forever. And that's Brady thanking Hubert after that game, saying, "Thank you, coach. This is why I came here." Things like that. Like that's what Hubert's talking about. And now it's their turn to have those same experiences that Hubert had in the tournament, and actually being able to win big games like that 1990 game where Hubert passed the ball to Rick Fox. And like down the road, we're asking Hubert about that game 32 years ago. Hubert wants it to be able down the road, these players to be asked about big time games, and that starts Thursday, and it's pretty cool to hear Hubert be like, yeah, we have all these stories, but at the end of the day, it's like I want them to be able to tell their stories, and that starts tomorrow.
Yeah, you didn't have to mention it was 32 years ago. It was freshman year at Carolina for me, watching it on Third West in Granville when Fox made the layup against Oklahoma. Wow. And now my firstborn is a freshman at Carolina, living in Granville as well. 32 years, man. Appreciate that, Gregory.
That's pretty cool, though, that you were a freshman they were an 8 seed, and now he's a freshman, and UNC is an 8 seed again. Look at that.
Pretty much the same situation. Greg, how important is it for a guy like Brady Manning?
Time is a flat circle.
Yeah. I wish time would slow down a little bit. Greg, how important is it for Manick, Leaky? They've had the experience going into the tournament. I mean, Gregory Hall's never had the experience covering the NCAA tournament. You've been around it forever. How important is the experience in this setting?
I think it's important. Typically, it would be important, but because of what's taken place the last 2 years, I think there's such little experience that, I mean, Brady can probably share a few stories here or there, but it's not like he's had, some deep runs. Kind of Leaky's the same way dating back to his freshman year. So there's a little bit that they can pull from, but not a whole lot. And I think that's for a lot of teams nationwide, because when you completely wipe out an entire season and then you have the bubble year last year, it kind of changes things. Now, I will say, kind of on the flip side of this, it's not NCAA tournament experience, but it's just experience in general. Hubert Davis has talked a lot about chemistry and how this team is operating in terms of togetherness better than they have all season long. I think that clearly dates back to last year as well, because when the sophomores now, so Caleb Love and RJ Davis, when those guys came in, they didn't have crowds to play in front of. They didn't get the standard North Carolina experience, let alone the NCAA tournament experience. And Baycott was talking about how last year, even though the tournament took place, I mean, they were pretty much like, here, you come here and practice, you go here and eat dinner, and then you go play the game. That's it. That's all you do. And so these guys just haven't had those opportunities to really enjoy being around one another. I'll never forget Will Graves talking about doing I don't remember what the name of the slide is, but down in the Bahamas, doing the big slides, and they were all scared to do it. But by doing it together and having a good time, they bonded in August. And that really set the stage for them to have a fun year. A lot of these guys haven't had those experiences. And so to be able to come as far as they have, just in terms of the emotional compatibility aspect of it, this really gives them another shared experience of okay, this is what an NCAA tournament is like. And I think that's more important than maybe the experience that Leaky or Brady can share, because they're actually having to do it together. And I think that's a very important thing. And that's not just for Carolina. That's for a lot of these teams across the country who have kind of been left out due to what's happened with COVID.
Yeah, that's a good take on that. I think it's the leap of faith slide down at the Atlantis. Did it multiple times back in 2019 down there covering with you guys. Let's turn to the Marquette game specifically. A lot of people want to look ahead to Baylor. I don't think that's wise. Gregory, somebody in the chat said Marquette's biggest player is 6'7", 250, which that's why Baycott has his eyes wide open on being able to dominate on the glass. But this Marquette team has some quality wins, probably has better quality does have better quality wins than Carolina has, minus the Duke game, in my opinion. So what challenges does Marquette present for Carolina if they're not going to be able to present the size physicality challenge?
Greg and I were talking about this while we were sitting there in the media room, just looking at Marquette's pace of play. When they have the ball, they only have it for 15.2 seconds on average, which is fifth fastest in the country. When they don't have the ball, their opponents have the ball for 18.3 seconds on average, which is 321st in the country. So when they get the ball, they're running, they get out quick, they score quick, and they don't really allow defenses to set up. And then on the other end, they're very annoying on defense. Greg, you mentioned the deflections thing where Shaka their team tracks deflections as a stat. And what'd you say? Like they average 29.5 deflections a game or something like that. So,
yep.
So they're going for the ball. And if you read and watched Trevor Marks's breakdown, you know that sometimes they overcommit and they'll give up like 4-on-3s. And so teams that have had success against Marquette have been able to kind of recognize at the top that the guards are going to come after the ball, quick pass, couple passes, and they get an open basket before Marquette even has a chance to be difficult on the defensive end. So that's kind of what they want to do. They want to get out quick and they want to frustrate you and force turnovers. And so if UNC has bad transition defense and turns the ball over, that's exactly what Marquette wants, and they'll have a better chance at winning than UNC does if that happens.
Marquette averages right at 7.9, 8 steals a game. Carolina's less than 5.5. Greg, is that where this game's won or loss for Carolina, is ball security?
I think that's a big part of it for all the reasons that Gregory just laid out. Marquette, I was looking it up earlier. I think they're averaging a little bit over 15 fast break points per game. So that kind of speaks to how they utilize steals and turnovers to kind of get out and transition and score easy buckets. And that's one of the reasons that, I mean, they led the Big East in conference play and effective field goal percentage at 54%. That's solid. And that's without being very good offensively. They were dead last in offensive rebounding percentage. So think about that. Dead last in offensive rebounding percentage. So they're not getting many second chance point looks, but yet they're still very effective in scoring the ball. Certainly a key. I really think this comes down to the toughness aspect. I mean, just go back to the Pitt game 4 weeks ago. Pitt had no business being in that game with North Carolina. So what Pitt did was like, you know what? We are going to be as physical as possible and see if North Carolina can handle it. North Carolina could not handle it. And you know, the response, I know fans say, oh, well, the refs are against Carolina. No, the refs let them play. And Pitt played and Carolina didn't until Carolina woke up. And you saw there in the last 10 minutes that, hey, if Carolina had played like this the whole game, this would be a blowout. But that didn't happen. Is Carolina playing better basketball? Yes, they are. But you know, this team has lost 7 of its 9 games by 20, but they've trailed by at least 20 points in 7 of their 9 losses. And so that kind of speaks to, they still have that trend of sometimes when they get hit, they wobble. We saw that on Friday night. And so I think if they've got to come out and they've got to match or surpass Marquette's physicality, if they do that, they can win this game for sure.
Greg, everyone says that your guard play is the only really thing that'll take you as far in March. You were showing me Caleb Love's shot chart earlier. What's your take on Heel's guards being able to take them on this run that some people have said that UNC could go on if they get through Marquette on tomorrow?
Well, look, if Caleb Love is good Caleb Love and takes care of the ball and has good assist numbers and scores efficiently, and that's not shooting 55%, that's shooting 42%. Carolina has a chance to go on a run. But when Caleb struggles, like he did against Virginia Tech, because Virginia Tech did a very good job pressuring the ball, and RJ Davis struggles, Carolina really has no chance. And that's how they get knocked out. If they can't handle Marquette's pressure and they have too many turnovers and they're frustrated and take bad shots and can't make shots, the game's over. I mean, Carolina's not going to have a chance. And so undoubtedly, if you look at all of Carolina's best teams, right, whether you got Raymond Felton at point guard in 2009 or 2005, whether you got Ty Lawson, 2009, you got Joel Berry, 2017, Marcus Page, 2016, Kendall Marshall, right? We may be talking about another national championship if Marshall doesn't get hurt in 2012. And all those guys were very strong. They were aggressive. They knew how to run the offense, all those kind of things. RJ and Caleb are not quite to that level yet because they're still young guys. But this is an opportunity for them to say, hey, you know what? We may not be there yet, but this is our chance to show that we're getting there. And if they can have a couple good games in this tournament, that really sets the stage for them in the future to really kind of turn it on. But undoubtedly, I absolutely agree. Guard play is so critically important in this tournament, especially. And so, yeah, as we said all year long, this team goes how Caleb Love goes. And even when he has bad games, if he can step up and make big shots late, that's sometimes enough. I think at this point of the year, when you're going up against a good team every night, you can't rely on him just to be good late. He's got to be pretty good throughout the whole game.
And they might not be as good as those guys individually, but if RJ and Caleb are playing their roles, they together, they can act as a Joel Berry, right? Someone that can be tough and drive, but can also be the floor general, which is what RJ has kind of grown into recently as kind of the main ball handler. And he talked about that today, even being like, look, I've just kind of settled into my role. And it's been great.
The thing about it is if you wait till the end, to Greg's point, if Caleb Love waits to the end of the game to start playing, or if Carolina waits to the end of the game to start playing, you realize that if you lose, the season's over. And that's when that basket shrinks and gets really small when the end is creeping up on you. And so I agree, Carolina can't wait. Greg, two words, Shaka Smart and Texas basketball. Obviously, he's coaching at Marquette now, but Shaka knows how to play against North Carolina. He's had a lot of success. And what did his teams do against Carolina? They bullied him around. Right. Does he have that with this Marquette bunch to be able to do that? You can try, but to be able to do it effectively, do you think they can do that?
I think they can on the perimeter, and I think maybe they can with Brady. This is one of those games where Armando Bacot has a distinct advantage, and he's got to own it. And that's why I say we expect him to win his matchup, right?
Did we lose Greg Barnes to the Fort Worth internet?
We might have for a little bit. This Marriott.
Because if Bacot's able to control the paint offensively. Am I back?
Yeah, you're back.
All right. If Bacot, when he's in the paint offensively, he's got to be dominant. And that's not just getting the ball and scoring. That's specifically on the offensive glass, because Marquette really doesn't have an answer for him. And in terms of size, somebody said 6'7", 245. That's Justin Lewis. He's a big kid. He's more of kind of a wing, kind of a 3-4 type player. They've got a couple bigger guys who aren't as thick as him. Kerr Quarth, who played with Brady Manick at Oklahoma. He's a really good shot blocker. I mean, in terms of block percentage, he's top 10 in the nation. He doesn't play a lot of minutes. He'll probably play more Thursday than he has all season just because they need him. They got a couple other guys, but they're still undersized. And I think it's just an opportunity for Brady to really dominate down low on both ends. And that may just be a little bit too much for Marquette. But certainly Marquette can pressure on the wing, and they can pressure Brady, I think. And that's going to be something those guys are going to have to battle back against.
You mentioned those guys down low. They're both shooting. Kurkoth and Oso Iguodaro are both shooting above 70% from two, but they don't play a lot. So it's one of those things where Shaka has to balance. Do I play what my guys are comfortable with, or do I play more towards matchups with what I need against UNC? So it'll be interesting to watch tomorrow if he kind of expands that rotation to try to get some size and some guys that have been successful from two, albeit with just about 100 shots from two compared to guys that got over 200. So it'll be interesting.
I don't think, if I'm a coach, I'm not changing what got me there. You might play the big guys a little bit to present something different to Baycott, but I don't think you go full out switch up why you got there. But I do believe that Smart understands how to play North Carolina. And we'll see that at 4:30 Eastern. Looking at matchups, a lot was discussed with Leaky Black. Is Leaky on Justin Lewis? Do you put him on one of the other guys and just completely take somebody else out? I do find it fascinating. A couple things. One, Oklahoma's transfers could probably finish top tier at the ACC. And two, one guy on this Marquette team, played against Carolina last season. Such is the nature of college basketball these days. But what does Leaky do in this one, Greg?
It's a great question, Tommy. And the fact that Lewis, typically has played the four. He's not like a phenomenal athlete. He's a good athlete, but he's not like out of this world. This kind of leads me to think that Brady is going to have to defend him. I think in the first Duke game, Hubert Davis that was a learning lesson for him. Try to kind of get, I don't want to say cute, but try to think out of the box a little too much, and it got him in trouble. And in Cameron, he just told his guys to man up and said, Brady, good luck to you. You do your best against Banchero. And he did a pretty good job. He did a good enough job for North Carolina to be able to win that game. And so because of that, maybe they'll mix it up and put Leaky on Lewis some. But I have to imagine that Brady will be the primary ass there, just because, it's a small lineup. And so are you going to put Brady Manick on Daryl Marcel? Maybe, but that's going to be a challenge for Brady, because Daryl's he's very much a kind of a driver and penetrator type of wing guy. And I think that's probably where Leaky will do a better job. But Hubert's got options. And I think he mentioned it today. The good thing about Leaky is 1-4. We saw him against Kihei Clark for Virginia, and we saw him against Banchero. So the guy can guard pretty much any position. So you got a lot of different options.
That's kind of hard to believe the way you put it there, back to back. Garden Clark one night, Banchero the day before or the game before. Just fascinating what Leaky's been able to do. Greg, X factors in this one. Gregory, X factors in this one. Can't be goes and comes as Caleb Love. We understand that's a thing every night. So what needs to happen for Carolina to be successful?
I think RJ needs to be able to take care of the basketball and run point efficiently and successfully. Because it's going to be like what Virginia Tech tried to do and get up on them and lower the shot clock and things like that. It's going to be very similar type of pressure, especially if they go into the 1-2-2 zone that Trevor highlighted and things like that could confuse RJ a little bit. When he drives, he's going to get swarmed quickly. He just needs to be able to take care of the basketball and deliver it the way cleanly. And if that can happen, and you're looking at RJ getting his points that he normally does in 15 range, I guess that's a little above his average, but still the point remains. And then getting those assists with having like a 3-to-1 turnover ratio or something like that, I think UNC can be successful. So I really think it's RJ. I know he's the other guard, but just the way that Marquette tries to force turnovers and like those steal numbers you mentioned, if they can limit those, and it starts with him.
Greg, once upon a time, if you said, "Oh, a team loves to run," they get up and down. I'll never forget. And I'm dating myself a lot. Carolina played Loyola Marymount, 88 tournament. Gregory, you probably remember it in your previous life.
I was going to say.
And Carolina won like 129-97 when they thought Gathers and Bo Kimball and all them would run Carolina off the court. It's a little bit different these days, Greg. Carolina's slower, more methodical, but doesn't Marquette's up-tempo speed sort of benefit the Tar Heels? And given that, who's important? Is it RJ to protect the basketball? Is it something else? Is it Baycott staying on the floor? What's your X factor?
Yeah, well, let me say this: is your comment about the Loyola game. The story that we ran yesterday on the Oklahoma upset back in 1990, the game against Kentucky earlier that year, Kentucky pressed Carolina. Carolina won that one 121-110 in regulation.
I remember that one too.
I mean, that is a ton of points. It's been a long time since seen a game like that. Yeah, I think people have asked this year, is Hubert getting away from the Roy Williams style in terms of pushing tempo at a chaotic pace? I think the answer to that is we don't know. And the reason I say that is, especially early in the year and last year, RJ and Caleb, you almost wanted them to get going too fast if you were the opponent, because that's when they got careless. That's when they rushed things. And Carolina, for a while there, their best basketball came in half-court sets when they were forced to be methodical and to take their time and to be patient, and they made better decisions that way. I think RJ has progressed a good bit more than Caleb has. Caleb has as well, though. And so I think this will be a test for him for sure. I don't know that Carolina necessarily wants to run at that pace because they haven't proven that they can do it consistently. But I think they can take advantage of some of these lapses. Like Gregory said, anytime you press, as long as you're aggressive going against the press and you're willing to pass the ball up the court instead of just trying to dribble, you can get some easy looks. And so that's what Carolina has to do. And so they have to take their time. And that's the test for Shaka, right? Is, okay, they're going to get some easy looks, but if we're getting more turnovers and more easy looks for us, we're going to net out ahead. And that's really the game plan, is trying to figure out, okay, well, they're beating us too often. You know, Rick Pitino at Louisville, what did Roy Williams do? Louisville would always try to press Carolina, and Carolina would kill them. And so Rick Pitino would have to call off the press. And so that's kind of what we're looking at here. You know, I don't think they're quite at the point where you feel comfortable going against it, but they're going to have to be very patient, very methodical, and just make very good decisions.
Gregory, you started the question thread in our Slack, so I'll ask you the first question. We'll do that one last. Does the bench get more playing time in the first game? I think if this is ever a game where you're playing to make daggone sure you win, I would say no to the answer to that question. But what do you think? What is the rotation going to be? I guess it depends on the flow of the game, but if you had to make a guess right now.
I think Puff comes in first off the bench for defense. I mean, it's pretty much the rotation that Hubert's had, which the bench comes off in the first half to spell some minutes, and then the starters play the second half. Puff will come off the bench to either for Leaky or Brady, most likely for Brady if he's the one on Lewis. He'll come in. Leaky will switch to guarding Lewis. Puff will guard Morcell. You might see Dontrez for his defense, or it's just as athletic ability, and then McCoy too. I mean, McCoy's come off the bench to play some, but you don't really see that much in the first half. And someone asked about Kerwin, and if Kerwin's defense is off, then he's just not going to play. So that kind of answers the question about why Kerwin hasn't played much recently. Is just his defensive ability hasn't been there. And that's why. And he'll come in for like a series or two, and he'll make a defensive gaffe, and then Hubert will sub him right out. So it's pretty easy to see that. And I know it's like, no, you need a shooting. Well, not if RJ, Caleb, and Brady are hot, right? So it's kind of like give and take there. But rotation wise, it'll be what it has been in the past, which is they come in the first half, spell some minutes, and then second half, if it's a close game, the starters will play and ride it out.
Question somebody, I believe Jay asked. Jay, what's up? How much different is this matchup than last year's Marquette game? I already mentioned that earlier. They got one player, Greg Elliott, that played for Marquette last year, and then Carolina's got plenty of new coaching staff. So I don't think that game plays much role in this, other than it could have been a interesting storyline should there be somebody still on the roster. But I'll ask you this, Greg, before we get out of here, a couple more questions. How good are Marquette's guards on the offensive end? We've talked about their defense, Greg, and their hecticness getting in passing lanes, but what do they look like offensively, and can they pose problems?
They can. They got a young point guard, Tyler Kolek, who played at George Mason last year, but he's been very solid for them in terms of assist rate. I think he's top 50 in the country, and he's a pretty good defender as well. Not a great 3-point shooter, although he takes a lot of them. I think he's around 30%, but he's solid. But then, I mean, you talk about Daryl Morcell. I mean, Daryl's one of the top defensive players in the country. Just a Hoss, 6'5", 205, great wing player. Played at Maryland under Mark Turgeon for a number of years, and this was really good for. I mean, he's played a ton of basketball throughout his career. And then the other one is Elliott, who you talked about. Elliott's been around a while, pretty good outside shooter, not much of a penetrator. He's more of kind of a guy they kick out to for open looks on the perimeter. But they've got some pesky guys that are on the perimeter. And I think Kolek's one of those guys that fans will probably hate when they watch him, because he's very exuberant. He kind of acts like a tough guy a little bit on the court. He was doing that during open practice today. And so, this is kind of the mentality that Shaka instills in his players. And I think I don't know, they have some attitude. I don't know if they talk trash. I don't know if this is Paulo Banchero, who just runs his mouth the whole game. And so I don't know what kind of chippiness we're going to be seeing with Caleb. We know Caleb likes to talk, right? With Theo John and a lot of those guys from Duke. I don't know if Marquette's that way, but they do carry themselves with kind of a brashness. And so I think that component will be interesting to see how it plays out.
You mentioned somebody that talks trash a lot. Peter Kiss for Bryant. Looks like they're going home in the first four, losing to Wright State. Wright State beat NC State, if I remember correctly. Interesting. And I mentioned other games, Greg.
Is that a feather in the cap, Tommy?
That's a feather in the cap. That got them in the tournament. Well, no, I guess their conference. That was their biggest out of conference win. Yeah. Peter Kiss, I keep wanting to think about Peter Criss of Kiss and sing Rock and Roll All Night, Party Every Day. That's another old man reference.
Remember that
Gregory,
one, Gregory?
do you know that? Have you ever heard the song Rock and Roll All Night?
Yes.
By who? How's it go?
I don't know. Something like rock and roll all night.
There we go.
Yeah, there you go.
There
It's amazing how it translates.
The Texas music is flowing through me. I got my where is it?
I don't know if I'd say Kiss is Texas.
I've got
my Longhorn.
You see my big? I got a horse.
Overlooking my bed while I'm sleeping at night. I got a Longhorn.
That's some great decor there.
Protecting me.
You got to go eat some brisket or something. Gregory, you put it in the question thread, so I ask it. Does anybody have a take on I think Lunardi had Carolina in the Elite Eight. We're getting way ahead of ourselves. I'll freely admit my bracket, my family challenge, my ESPN challenge, I got Carolina in the Elite Eight, which means I just jinxed it for tomorrow night. But realistically, what is a successful tournament run for this team going into round one, Gregory?
Win tomorrow, and then play respectable on Saturday. And if you win, great. If you don't, you lost to a really good Baylor team and you fought for 40 minutes. And then, because this is a team 2.5 months ago that was on the bubble the whole time, like the whole last 2 months of the season. So as far as successful tournament run for this team, as an 8 seed, I think it's that you win tomorrow and then you're respectable on Saturday against Baylor in a good, close, tough game, and the better team, or at least more talented team on paper, comes out on top in Baylor, just kind of the numbers and how they play defensively. Tommy, you mentioned UNC, having UNC in your Elite Eight. My friends get on me for being the ultimate jinx and just getting everything wrong all the time. And I was telling Greg I lost like 12 bets straight while I was up in New York or something like that in college basketball games. So my friends didn't get mad at me. I have UNC losing tomorrow in my bracket. So if they win, then I'm the ultimate jinx. And it's like I can never, ever bet on UNC or Auburn or anybody ever again. Any teams that I have people near me that want to win, I have to want them to lose.
So where's Auburn in your bracket?
Losing like third round or something like that.
The homerness.
I'm playing the reverseness here.
Reverse
who's your national champion, Tommy?
I've got Zona beating Kentucky in the national championship.
Kentucky.
Yep.
So you got him Kentucky taking out Gonzaga?
Gonzaga, Kentucky winning, Zona and Kansas, or did I go Iowa? I had to look. I think I went Kansas. I'm pretty chalk when I get to the end. I had some upsets early. I got South Dakota State as my double-digit Sweet 16. Greg, what's successful for this team? Is this it, or does it go beyond this?
I think this has been a successful season. I said before the season started that I thought if this team can somehow get to the Sweet 16, that it would be a fantastic first year for Hubert. And the fact that he lost a starter in Dawson Garcia midway through the season and has been limited since then, I think winning at Cameron on Coach K's final home game makes this year a success regardless. But the fact that Carolina did that and was able to get to the NCAA tournament in Hubert's first year, it's a success. Everything from here on out is gravy. So hopefully fans appreciate that and they won't get all mad whenever Carolina loses. They'll lose at some point. And this is not a team that's going to win the national championship. Can they make it to next weekend? Sure. But hopefully fans understand that and are able to kind of enjoy the ride and not get so distraught when that loss eventually comes.
Greg, what will it take for Caleb to get out of the crazy shooting slump that he's been in?
It's a good question. And like we've talked about before, Gregory, I mean, if you look at what he does at the free throw line, I mean, he's phenomenal.
He's the school leading free throw shooter.
And let's see here. I mean, if you look at what he's done this year from the 3-point line, he's at 37%, which is really good. The problem is, once he gets inside that 3-point line, it goes haywire. He shot 34% from 2-point range in ACC play. I think that's worse than last year. Let's see. Yeah. He shot 36.8% in ACC play last year from 2, 34% this year. So 0.25% worse this year than last year, which makes no sense. And so some of that shot selection, we've talked before. Some of that is, when he goes to the rim, it's almost like he's looking for contact to get a foul instead of just trying to score. And he takes bad angles at times, and that little floater doesn't seem to work. So those are things that can be corrected. But he's a kid that has a ton of potential. He's a great athlete. He can shoot the ball. He just needs some more development. And, if he decides to stay at Carolina for another 2 years, he could have a phenomenal senior year. But some of this stuff has to be addressed and has to be worked on, because we know he's a great free throw shooter. We know he's a clutch player when it matters. If that's the worst thing or the best thing you have going for you, a lot of people will take you. And good 3-point shooter. So a lot of good components there. He's just got to figure out kind of around the basket and shot selection, those kind of things.
You got to drive to put the ball in the basket, put it in the hole.
Yep.
And and you nailed it the other day. You were talking about, you nailed it just then. When you drive looking for contact, that's why guys that finish, and we talk about Tyler Hansbrough all the time. That dude, like Dewey said the other day, he would make a basket and start going down the other court, and they're like, no, you got to and one because you got foul. And that's the mindset there. And I do believe it's a mindset, not a skill. You're right, though. He's going to be important. He's going to play an important role. Carolina needs to protect the basketball, and I think they need to dominate on the rebounding end and handle business against Marquette. Everybody is still a little bit shy to get all in with this Carolina team, given that Pittsburgh game, given the Virginia Tech performance the other day. But we saw how good Virginia Tech is playing and is as they handled business for the rest of the ACC tournament. Greg Barnes, I'm Tommy Ashley. It's been On the Beat Live. I'm going to get out of here right here at 9:00 Eastern so these boys can go eat. They're going to eat at, I'm sure, some 5-star exquisite restaurant. So, Gregory, you better get you a second job while you're in Texas if you're going so you can afford it, brother.
I need some of that oil money.
Tommy, I got a text from Hawkins. We get to pick our cow, and they will carve off whatever piece of meat we want, and they'll cook it in front of us. So it's going to be exquisite dinner.
Gregory, you can't eat hooves and stuff. You got to get a piece of meat,
I might only be able to afford the hooves.
What'd you eat? A burger. I had a burger, a quarter-pound burger. That's all you're going to be able to afford at Hawk's Restaurant. Boys, it's been fun. It's always a pleasure. Thanks for people to jumping in and listening. Thanks for people taking time out of their day to listen to me and Gregory and Greg talk about Carolina, Marquette, NCAA tournament, March Madness. Johnny T-shirt, johnnyt-shirt.com. Of course, support us, rate us, review us, subscribe, all that good stuff. We'll be back again soon. We'll have a post game tomorrow at some point with somebody. Don't know who yet, but I'll be here to talk about Carolina.